things are going to be very difficult. The Pentagon put out that 2030 video they did 4 or 5 years ago, where it's a training video, and you should go watch this on our website. I've written on it, but they've been preparing for this. The indication was martial law will be erected and put into effect in time of economic distress, they call it. And it's weird watching that now, seeing what's happening, the collapsing of the economy, stores going out of business, local newspapers collapsing. We could be facing something just crazy coming down the pipe. But that will be a good reason to do martial law, not medical martial law, but the real deal in this country.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance and Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest who brings a great amount of experience advocating for liberty. John Whitehead is the founder of the Rutherford Institute. He joins us again to talk to us about what we are facing that's being put upon us as the new normal in the wake of the COVID disaster. John, thanks for joining us here again.
Thank you for having me on, sir.
We've been seeing press release after press release come out from different governors and from major news outlets that are using this terminology, quote, the new normal, and ordinary people who've been locked up in our homes pretty much asking, when can we get back to normal? When can we get back to living lives where we feel like we are sovereigns and we have the ability to choose where we go, what we do, whether we can work or not, whether we can earn for our family, etc., travel, and we're being told, no, you shouldn't be expecting, just as we suddenly locked down all of the privileges and liberties that we used to expect. Now we're being told, don't expect that things are going to be going back the way they are. There's going to be a new order that you're going to be subject to, and you better get used to that idea. So can you talk to us about what you're seeing put forth as the new normal restrictions that are not likely to be going away unless we fight for our rights?
Well, after 9/11, we got the U.S. Patriot Act and all kinds of crazy things that basically erected a total surveillance state, allowing the government to go into your bank and get records, national security letters, where they can go into the bank and demand records, and the bank cannot tell you they're doing it. What we're seeing now, the so-called new normal, in my opinion, is the culture, the society is being psychologically reconstructed, in the sense that the so-called new normal is to get ready for basically, I think, a digital global state, and I think that's coming. It may not be, it won't be announced with flags and whatever they do, in ceremonies, but it's here. I mean, it's been approaching for a long time. In fact, I think it's been here longer than we think. I mean, the thing that you have to realize about the government is that when they're putting programs into effect, they never tell you until the program's already there. So we're ruled by people who have virtually no scruples, no morals, psychopathic personalities, a lot of them. The so-called deep state is what people call it. And I mean, if you look in the history, and most Americans do not know the history of this country or what's been going on, all the experiments with MK Ultra, putting LSD in people's coffee and drinks, and experimenting, and all the things we've seen. In fact, I have a commentary which will be issued today on April 21st, which I call Human Lab Rats, which should go into all the experiments that have been conducted over the years by the government. And some of the most recent ones dealing with the Department of Veteran Affairs, dealing with dogs and cats and stuff they're getting from places like China, is one of the countries, in Brazil. Then they're chopping them up and feeding them different animals, seeing how they react to diseases. Well, that was announced about a year ago. And now we have this virus coming on us. So there are a lot of strange things. You have to look at the history and the people who are running our country. And the new normal has been here for quite a while. The problem is that if you're looking the other way, and I'm going to look the other way real quick, and I'm looking at a TV set or I'm looking at a screen device, such as we're on today. But, again, I'm not totally opposed to that. But when you become so enamored by it that you believe everything you see, you're easily manipulated. CBN, I'll go Fox News, any of those organizations. James Madison, who wrote the Bill of Rights, gave us the best advice. He said we ought to mistrust all those in power to a certain degree. And that means people with their lips moving on TV or whoever, especially government agents, because they're paid to do this. This is their job. How many people? I don't know. Then again, if you're, I know you're probably familiar with Project Paperclip.
I'm not.
Okay. Right after World War II, and this has been documented in many books and articles, New York Times. The United States government brought in over 1,000 top Nazi scientists and stuff, and they went into the universities in this country. They were working with the CIA, NSA, and groups like that. And they basically infiltrated the culture, and they've been there for quite a while. I mean, some people who have actually testified before Congress, some back in the 80s and 90s that were former agents said they had run into these people working with the CIA who had trouble speaking English. They only spoke German, basically. So you have that mentality, and it switched from here, from Germany into our country. And again, you can call me a conspiratorialist, but if you go and look in my article that's coming out today, Human Lab Rats, it's all documented in major publications. This has happened. The problem is that we're so naive, Americans are. We'll believe anything that people say. And just as long as we can go to the football game or watch it on TV or watch whatever we're doing, we're happy. And we're sort of a somnambulant population, in my opinion. I mean, zombies. It was John Carpenter, the great filmmaker, who did some really good movies, by the way, that hit on these things like Lay, Live, and others, when he said the monsters are us, the zombies are us. And so we're asleep. And when these things come upon us all of a sudden, boing, 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 we're all freaked out and going nutty and fighting over toilet paper and stuff like that. And I guarantee you the people in the higher powers, just call it the deep state. You can call it whatever you want to. I call it the corporate state. They're giggling. They're watching. This is working. Look at these people. They have no common sense. And so the new normal, as you call it, I think is a psychological reconstruction of society, basically. They're getting us used to more of this. 9/11 was a good feeder and it worked well. And now we're in this kind of situation where I'm seeing people I used to know that were decent people. Now they look at you like they back off and go, like, whoa, dude. And it's this idea that you may be dangerous or there's something wrong with you. That's going to stick to a large portion of the population. They're going to have this distance. So, and we're dealing with an entity, basically, as we move into the digital global state, that sees us as data bits, basically. Zuckerberg, Eric Schmidt, people who run Google. I mean, Bezos, those people like that. These people run together. I mean, what was interesting was that Zuckerberg had 2 dinners in the White House in October with Donald Trump. It just kind of leaked out a little bit. What was he doing there in October? They didn't say what he was doing there. And now Zuckerberg has made it public that if there's any demonstrations or whatever like that, they're going to black it off of, get rid of it off of Facebook. Well, that's to me is draconian dictatorial Nazism to me. Let people have free speech. I'm a free speech advocate. If people want to demonstrate, let them demonstrate. Why? Because the First Amendment says you can do it. And that's another thing with most Americans is they don't know what their rights are. They don't learn them in the schools. The schools don't teach rights anymore. Kids come out of schools not knowing what's in the Bill of Rights. They don't need the Declaration of Independence, which is a really radical document. And so what are you going to get? You'll get a bunch of people who just want to sit around their butts and take it. And it's the Martin Niemöller quote from Nazi Germany. First they came for me, and he goes down, they came for this person, came for me, and finally when they came for me, there was no one to help me. What we need right now is a populace, at least a good segment of a population that says, we're not taking this stuff anymore. We're going to fight back. We're going to get together. And I get a lot of people come to me saying, we're going to get our guns and we're going to get well, you can get your guns for all you want, but listen, let me tell you, the government's ready. They're armed to the teeth on a federal, the 175,000 federal agents running around this country with hollow point bullets. They work with the local police, the FBI. They're all one big unit. We have a standing army. They're going to blow you away. And what they fear most is people who have strategy, plan it, purposeful demonstrations that really highlight things and are willing, basically, to get arrested and call someone like me or our group, whoever will defend them, and take a stand for freedom. And so we're going to have to be wise. I would say there is a certain thing, there's some things that we can do, but we're going to have to really be wise here, because the people controlling the media and the government are going to look at you and say, these are the weirdos, like Zuckerberg saying he's going to will not allow that to be on Facebook. And I look at him and go, you sound like a fascist when you freedom of speech is let anybody say what they want to say. If they're, again, if they want to demonstrate, they want to do it, let them do it as long as it's peaceful. Don't black them out.
Well, right. There's one step, and that is allowing that the protests are allowed to physically occur. There's another step of saying we're going to deny the greater populace the awareness that that's even happening. We don't want that. We don't want that to catch on. We don't want to catch fire, and for people to be inspired by others who are taking the stand that you talked about. That's a whole other level of manipulating of, I guess it's propaganda, when you don't want certain messages to come out.
It's propaganda, but here's the key. Fear, as I've said, builds its own prison walls. Make a population fearful. Yes, who said that really well? Adolf Hitler. You get them afraid, you can control them. You can do anything to them. You can get them afraid. And, with whatever you're seeing today, again, it's hard to get all the facts of these things, the deaths and all what's going on. But it's to the extent now that, again, are people going to get in line? Are they going to question the government? Are they going to just ask questions? And I've had interns over the year who studied me, and I always tell them there's one word that really bugs a politician: why? Why are you doing this? Why are you funding? Oh, we have a package that we're going to send out and give people money all across the country. Why are you giving $90 billion to the Department of Homeland Security in that package? I thought they already had jobs and we're working. But see, you're dealing with a very corrupt government. If you think it's not corrupt, I mean, come on, think about this for a second. You either pay your taxes or you go to jail, you lose your property, okay? You have a home. If you don't pay your taxes, they'll come and take your home. Okay, now they're telling you, get that home, get off this. The police are arresting people for demonstrating. You don't have rights. Rights are, what did Jefferson say, what kind of rights we had? Unalienable. What does that mean? Unalienable rights are rights that are non-transferable. You got them, you can't get rid of them. You can go, okay, beat my head in. Or you can say, back off. We're going to take this to the hilt. We're going to fight back. And that's the people that will possibly change this country on something like this, We don't want to get people sick or anything, but the point is that most people that I've seen who've gotten in trouble during this stuff are not making people sick. And they're in places where there's not a lot of sickness. So the point is that I think we're being manipulated at this time pretty aggressively. It's obvious. And listen, they're enjoying it, watching it happen. This is the way. The question I've got to ask people, and I don't know the answer to it, is what's next?
Right. We had the 9/11 event that happened, whatever the genesis of that was, whatever the real story is behind it. There's certainly different stories around that, but the fallout from that was we had this notch of loss of freedom when traveling. We got the TSA. We got all these losses of rights from the Bill of Rights that are repealed by the Patriot Act in effect. But then now we've got that. But the idea where you've got this enemy which is the terrorist, and they could be anywhere around you, and so we have to protect you from them. Now we've got this new enemy that's the President Trump himself calls the unseen enemy, and it's like, what the minute? Hold on a second. For all of the years of history of all of our families have grown up through generations of living with nature and with diseases, and we're the survivors here to tell the tale. We'd like to get back to our lives, but we're being told, nope, now something's changed, something's different, and now you need us to protect you all the time by restricting your liberties further. Is that going to be harder for them to sell because people will be able to say, we've already proven that we can survive nature. That's why we're still here. So please get out of our way. We're going to get back to work. What's going to be the story that no, things are going to be different from now on, because what's different?
Well, the point is that they can foster anything and push it on you because the mainstream media won't push the same kind of philosophy they're pushing generally, the government. They may say they don't like Donald Trump, the mainstream media in certain places, but they're actually pushing the stuff that Trump's enjoying happening and the government's enjoying happening. So, it's going to be difficult to get anything done if you're believing what they're telling you. Is what I'm saying is you need to question it. Does this really make sense at this time? Does watching people drive down the street in a car and 4 people having masks on inside a car, does that make sense? They look like pod people from Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
The question is what? Again, getting the populace to be, we need to be skeptical. We need to be not cynical, but skeptical. Raise questions. And, where's all the money and all this stuff coming from? We have the biggest debt we've ever had in America, and now they're handing out money. And here's another thing. The states are now, and people are just hanging on a thread for the government to give them a little money. I mean, it's like everybody's in a welfare line, and the government's the big welfare daddy. But the problem with the welfare daddy is the welfare daddy's broke. And the welfare daddy owes money to Japan and China and countries like that. And when I look at a map of America, the thing I see in my head is made in China. Because every time I go to the store, everything is Chinese. What in the world's going on? How'd that ever happen? Why were we asleep? They didn't tell us, did they? No, they made big deals with other countries. They borrow money from other countries. And that's part of the global scheme. If you don't see the global government coming today, I'm just telling people you're blind, because it's obviously going to be there. You have Bill Gates now wanting to inoculate 7 billion people with vaccines. Many of them will have microchips in them, in their bodies. Talk about sci-fi. And you have Elon Musk now with his Neuralink, want to put it in your head and you can hook to a computer. The problem is we're moving into that digital age, and if we don't resist that, humanity is going to disappear. And empathy is going to disappear too, totally. Empathy is the key thing to being a real human being, caring about others. But like I say, I'm seeing now people backing up, walking, pointing fingers at people, and I'm going, uh-oh, where are we headed with this kind of cynical attitude toward one another? We don't want that. Listen, Jefferson, Madison, all the great thinkers said the thing you need to be cynical about or skeptical about is the government, not one another.
Yeah, I must confess from a personal experience standpoint that the few times that I've left the house to go don my mask and go out and fetch some groceries, we certainly had a big stock of foodstuffs. So we wouldn't have had to have done that, but there's some things we prefer to get, so we went out for some of them. And the experience of being in like Costco or other groceries and seeing everybody avoiding each other and seeing it it's almost like avoiding eye contact almost. It's really a very strange
restructuring, yes.
Very strange. So could you take us into a very specific question? Jane Grist asks, what constitutional rights would be broken if and when forced coronavirus testing, tracking, or vaccines are required for travel, working, buying, and selling? And then what can citizens do to fight this legally inside or outside the court system?
Well, you have the Fourth Amendment, which says your body is free from government touching or anything or surveillance unless they have clear proof you're doing something illegal. Now, the problem with the police today, as we've seen, it doesn't take much for them to do that. I mean, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals has now said that it's okay under the Fourth Amendment for the police to swipe your credit card. Take it from your billfold, the police can do it. It's going to be difficult. I mean, the constitutional rights are all there. The First Amendment says what? You have a right to free speech. You have a right to petition and fight the government as long as it's peaceful and protest. You have a right in the Second Amendment to own a firearm. Why? To protect yourself against marauders coming with guns, and they're called government agents. Third is you don't want the government in your homes or forcing you in your homes because you become like government agents. And down the line, I mean, So the problem I see with a lot of the courts, too, is being a lawyer of over 40 years, a lot of the courts acquiesce to whatever the government wants, especially the lower courts. Very, very difficult to fight. And you need attorneys out there. I'm begging attorneys across the country to get more involved in these things, trying to get attorneys to donate their time and help others. But I mean, it's across the board. I mean, here's what these things say. If they can force you to do this or that, and they're saying basically you have no rights. Either get in your home or we're going to arrest you, A, or B. I mean, you have people getting arrested and fined for walking down the wrong side of the street in some places. This has gone nutty. I mean, you can't go out. You have to, in some town in Maryland, they've now proclaimed you have to wear pants to go to your mailbox to get your mail. Ludicrous, but you can get arrested if you don't. What does that say about your so-called rights? You don't have any. And again, let me emphasize this. The Constitution starts with three great words: we the people. That means we are the government. We forget that. We keep saying they're the boss. No, the Constitution says you're the boss. The Bill of Rights, is just a bunch of no's saying no, no, no. And see, the people who wrote it knew that. They knew that. They faced that same thing. They were shot down. They were beaten. Their homes were raided. They were forced into their home in quarantine, if you want to call it that. So, it's across the board. I mean, listen, if it's true that our rights are inherent, come from nature, that they're unalienable, then we've got a tremendous treasure. The problem is 99% of Americans I talk to have no clue about any of that. They don't advocate it.
That's why we have you here talking with us about it and getting this out to our 75,000 plus subscribers, and hopefully they'll share that and pass it on. Hey, we've got a question from Gary Salisbury who says, is it legal to declare a medical martial law for a pandemic in the USA? And who gets to define when a pandemic is occurring?
The government, of course, and the pharmaceutical industry and the mainstream media, all the people working with the government. We live in a corporate state. That's the thing. And listen, the government can do whatever it wants as long as the people go, oh, I'm frightened. I think I'll run in the house and watch TV. Yes, that's how they win. They don't like that person that comes to the front door and say, get off my property, man. This is my property. And it is your property. You only give it away because you don't protect it. So, they can do whatever they want to do as long as we allow them to do it. And the problem with modern Americans, they're aligned to do it. We got to listen. 9/11 was a key thing. It got people in the mode of being a terrorist are everywhere and all this stuff. And again, there was a lot of evidence saying that wasn't true. We haven't seen much of it lately, have we? So that's gone by. And here's another thing. There's a great writer named Jacques Ellul who wrote a book called The Political Illusion. He said, modern man is man without memory. And what he was saying was, as the news cycle passes, it goes by, boing, 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 people go into a new mode. Remember a couple months ago, everybody was fighting about immigrants coming over the border and they're going to build a border wall, and that was a big deal. Now that's gone. We got a new news cycle. We've forgotten. We move on. And you can be manipulated psychologically. And they do that very well, by the way. And if you go back and study history and read some of the stuff I've written, the government's been doing psychological altering and testing for years. The NSA and all that, the Project Paperclip stuff, read about it, get up on this stuff, and see what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a mindset that doesn't see you as anything but data bits.
We've got a question here from Anonymous who says, is Bill and Melinda Gates' goal of depopulation of the world under the Georgia Guidestones, together with the goal of universal identification and tracking system under ID 2020, an important factor in the U.S. Supreme Court's support of the Second Amendment's right to self-defense of the individual citizen's life, liberty, and property?
Oh, yeah, I think that the Second Amendment is under attack because they don't want you to have weapons. They don't want you to be able to fight back. That's obviously. As far as Gates, the depopulation, all that is quite scary. I mean, think about that word depopulate. If I'm a man saying I want to depopulate, well, how do you depopulate? You kill. right? You get rid of. So what do they think of people? They don't think anything of people at all, or your rights. So the whole idea of this depopulation idea, whatever it might be, is to get rid of more people. But they're not getting rid of themselves. Why? Because they got a lot of money. They're hot people, all that kind of stuff. But again, it's what the people who run things think about you and I. We're basically nothing. And the Second Amendment is under attack. I think that it's going to be very difficult, and here's the reason. I said it earlier. The people in the, I call it law enforcement, federal, local, whatever, they're so armed right now. They've got cannons, tanks on wheels called MRAPs. There's a way to fight it. And again, Martin Luther King, people like that, they had a good idea. They strategized. They worked at it. They thought way ahead of their protests. They got people together. But the thing that King emphasized, well, he wasn't perfect, by the way. A lot of people don't like King here and there. But I thought his writings and his strategy were good. And that is, be peaceful, get arrested, civil disobedience. Get 200 people getting arrested drives the system crazy in a local town. They don't know 10 people getting arrested or 20 people getting arrested. And it takes people with guts to do that. And it was a good strategy, but I know this, that going down the street with a bang-bang shooting, you're going to get your head blown off. So there's a way to do it. And I'm pro-Second Amendment, but I know this, like I say, the government is armed. I mean, in 2013, the government contracted with the AT Corporation to purchase 1.6 million hollow point bullets for their agents. Hollow point bullets expand on contact and blow your arm or your head off. Kennedy and King both got hollow point bullets in the head. So you're dealing with something that I would call basically a monster when it gets out of control.
We have a question here from Anna Krzelinski who says, has the globalist cartel won the first round, and the, quote, contagion excuse will be used conveniently as the tool of choice to maintain control while the world's economic and social structure is reordered in their image?
Oh, yeah, I think so. They're doing it right now. They're restructuring. Like I said, they're restructuring. We're already in a global state to a certain extent. And thinkers have said with the internet, we moved into a global state. It's global, by the way. If you study the NSA, they have their Five Eyes program. They have bases all over the world, the NSA. They circle the world with their intelligence, Edward Snowden. And the one thing I've noticed, too, is that people who take a stand, it's going to be tough. Snowden runs for Russia. They put Julian Assange in a cage while government agents kill. Donald Trump has already dropped 73,000 bombs. How many people have he killed? And that's okay. But Julian Assange wants to tell people that the government's corrupt, and they put him in a cage. It's going to be tough, And I've been fighting this for 40 years, defending clients. And you can get, that they can bounce your head against the wall. But it's time right now. I think we have a little time now, but within the next 10 years, the way it's moving, it's going to be very difficult.
We have a question here. Now, you've touched on how this is not just national but global in nature, and that might provide some context for this following question. Wildman says, could we see a successful secession movement of states as a result of this crisis, in essence, a breaking up of the republic from its current form?
I don't see that, no secession, no. I don't think most of the governors, by the way, no matter who they are listen, the aid they get from the federal government now, they're controlled basically through all the money they're getting from the federal government, federal intervention fund. So, no, I don't think you're going to see any of that. I mean, that happened once, and they didn't like that. And you had the Civil War. A lot of people died in that one. So I would say, no, I don't think you're going to see any secessions or anything like that. We're living in a different society. We live in a society that is internet controlled, mass media controlled, and it's a totally different thing. We're living in basically an artificial world right now, in my opinion.
We have a question here from High Ground who asks, if most of America attempts to return to normal, but states like California, New York, etc. refuse to stop their unconstitutional behavior, what can the citizens of those states do to stop the criminals running those states?
Well, basically what I've said already, you're going to have to get together. You're going to have, in your local communities, you can. Under the 10th Amendment, local communities can nullify acts of state government, federal government. So, but most people don't get involved in their so-called government. Like I say, you are the government. We're the reason. Our laziness is the reason we're seeing this. Get involved in your local government, take it over. And with the things that I've seen over the last 20 years with the SWAT team raids, 80,000 annually, 80% of those for mere warrant service where a cop used to show up at your door. Now they're banging through doors and shooting people. You can stop that in your local communities. I've had some people fight that, and they've stopped the SWAT team stuff. You can do it, but you have to get active and get involved in local affairs. Washington, D.C. is not going to listen. It's run by a whole different set.
Bryce Canyon asks, if the present state of affairs continues, the population will be reduced to destitution and starvation. It's talking about deprivation from the ability to work. The right to work and acquire income and property, aren't these constitutional and human rights too?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Things are going to be very difficult, like I say. And again, I've written on this. The Pentagon put out that 2030 video they did 4 or 5 years ago where it's a training video, and you should go watch it on our website. I've written on it. But they've been preparing for this. The indication was martial law will be erected and put into effect in time of economic distress, they call it. And it's weird watching that now, seeing what's happening in the collapsing of the economy, stores going out of business, local newspapers collapsing. We could be facing something just crazy coming down the pipe. But that will be a good reason to do martial law, not medical martial law, but the real deal in this country.
John, for people who, now that article, the training video that you mentioned, we'll put a link to it in the description of this video as well for people who want to check that out. It is quite sobering. Can you talk to people briefly about where they can find out more about your work and what it is that you do at the Rutherford Institute?
You go to our website at rutherford.org. That's rutherford.org. And again, we have all the articles there that we write, and they're all documented, by the way, and footnoted. And my book, Battlefield America, Government of Will, good books are documented too, real deep. They go into all these issues. Here's the key. Education precedes action. There are a lot of good websites. Don't just watch the news, the CBN, whoever you're watching. Read articles, read books, get educated, and you'll be prepared. You'll blow them away at local city council meetings because most people don't even know what's going on that are sitting in government bodies these days, the local councils. And a lot of them are getting money from so-called corporate buddies.
We've been speaking with John Whitehead, the founder of the RutherfordInstitute.org. John, as always, thank you for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for speaking out, buddy. Thank you.
If you've decided that now is the right time for you to protect your family's financial future by acquiring physical precious metals, gold and silver, I'm delighted to let you know that I have now become a licensed dealer's representative for Miles Franklin, one of the oldest and most trusted names in bullion dealerships. And we can provide you with physical delivery to your personal possession or to professional vault storage or precious metals IRAs. Just email me at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com, and please include your name and phone number in your email to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. We'll get right back with you and find out how to best meet your needs so that you can either begin or increase your acquisition of physical precious metals now and protect your family's future starting today.